Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I finally got around to reconstructing my aprons or making a whole new pattern so that I could have something that fit looser, didn't have the ties around the neck or around the waist that was beginning to cause me a lot of irritation. So I will say that the aprons I made in the beginning, I started doing it before I even started my channel back in 2016, started creating my own aprons, and I loved them. I took an apron that I already had, liked the general shape of it, and then redesigned it, made it fuller. And I did do a video on that I also had, I think a year or so ago, remastered that I'll link to in the description box down below. But that is the tie around the neck and around the waist. The nice thing about those is if you're looking for something that's a little more form-fitting and shows off the feminine figure a little bit more, that is going to be the option. However, come on, let's face it, ladies, when we're in the kitchen or we're working around our farms, I don't have a farm, but I do have a garden with chickens. We want something that's going to be functional, comfortable, and cover our clothes because the apron's all about trying to keep from destroying our clothes. And at one point, even though I was living in my tie behind the neck aprons for years, just loved them, wore them, put them on. As soon as I get dressed, the apron would go on. I wore it all day long. And I loved it. Then suddenly one day I realized I couldn't handle wearing them anymore. I couldn't handle the ties around the neck. I couldn't handle the ties around the waist because going through menopause really changed something where I could not handle anything really tight against my skin. So I had to do a lot of changes in my wardrobe in general and the types of fabrics I was using as well. Now for my aprons, I'm using the ones I'm showing you is all 100% cotton. Linen is also a really, really great option. It's going to breathe well. It's going to flow well. So these are all very lightweight fabrics. In fact, this particular green fabric was sent to me from one of my followers. She came across it and figured I'd love it, and I do. I wasn't just sure if I wanted to make a skirt out of it, but then when I finally redesigned my aprons, this was the obvious choice. And then this is another fabric that I had on hand for when I was making the skirts to sell and I had enough yardage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of talk you through some of the differences and how I came up with this pattern. So this is the crossback pull over the head design. And so I based it loosely off of my original pattern. And right here, I'm going to show you a picture. The purple apron body shown is my original pattern, and the one underneath it is the new pattern, the new design for this particular style of apron that I'm wearing. What you should notice is basically the whole apron is wider for both the sake of better coverage and to allow more flow and being more comfortable, and especially considering the design of the apron. So yes, this part here comes out far wider, where my other one was about right here. This one comes out to here. Another thing is that in this image, you'll also notice where it came down from the top, the neck of the apron, it went down to two little points and then down again to where it went out to the edges, where those two first little points were where I would attach the ties that went around the waist. And so you can see what I did with this pattern is I skipped that whole thing and then drew a circular line going from the neck, from the top of the apron all the way out. So it just scoops all the way out and totally bypasses that because we're not going to be attaching ties. We don't need those little points on the waist there. Now, unfortunately, I really didn't keep track of the exact amount of yardage because I was just using fabric I already had on hand to construct the three different aprons. So I've got the browns, the blues, and the greens. So my best guess on this is going to be of your average width of fabric when you buy it. You're going to need about 3 yards, but this is also going to vary depending on how big you want to make it. Now, in the little clips I'm showing of the finished aprons, you'll notice I made them very long. And this, I guess I'm still a little bit taller than this. I need to raise it up a little bit more. But I'm a short person, and I like my skirts go pretty much clear to the floor, and I want my apron to cover quite a bit of my skirt if I can help it. So I want the apron long. And that's partly also the addition of the ruffle. The ruffle is going to make it longer. Now, my ruffle, I always cut it at about 10 inches wide, from top to bottom. And then you want your ruffle, if you're going to attach a ruffle, you want it to be, the material you use, you're going to want it to be about double the length of that whole circular bottom of the apron. So then for the back, for the straps back here, what I did, this is going to be a little different than probably other people would do it. So remember, I just made this pattern up myself. I didn't use anybody else's pattern. So I actually cut these pieces of material about 13 inches wide so that I could then fold it in half, because I didn't want just a single layer of fabric. I wanted a nice smooth and little bit thicker for the straps that are holding the apron up and then attaching to the back. So I fold right sides together, stitched it straight down, and I could just reach my hand through and then turn it right side out. So let's start with the order. The first thing that I do, now this is optional, I like to add a piece of fabric here that is, usually of a matching or contrasting color to whatever's in the apron. And not only does it just add a little more interest, it also adds a little more stiffness to this top. And so I like to do this with both my pockets and the top of the apron. And as you can see in the brown, I actually use two colors. So this one comes all the way up to here, and then the dark over the top. I stitch that part on first, at least just right across here. And so for this one, since I was using the two colors and this one all the way up, I just stitched it once across here because more stitching will happen later. I did go ahead and stitch this down here as well, but I didn't stitch across the top because I saved that for when I go to put the straps on. So that's one of the first steps I do. The other step I like to do is to make sure I've got the ruffle in place. I don't have a ruffler. I've never been interested in one once I kind of figured out my own way to do it. And I just do all my ruffles by hand. You'll see this in a lot of my videos, like where I'm making the patchwork skirts and I'm bunching each layer as I go. The way I do that is I just kind of bunch it as I go, and I'm bunching those even more. But then I do for the ruffle. So for the ruffle, I usually just do a fold in, a fold out, a fold in, a fold out as I'm sewing, as you can see in this clip right here. And that usually ends up being just right. If you want a more full ruffle, you're gonna wanna bunch that even more. So as you can see on here, I used the dark brown again for the ruffle to kind of bring all that color in. And then I did the same with the pockets. I put this also to stiffen up the top of the pocket, and then just to add more color there. Now, I don't have a specific printed pattern I can give you because I just make it up. And the patterns I shown in that picture, that's fabric I use. I usually, if I know it's a pattern I'm going to use again and again, then I will cut it out. Once I figure out what I'm going to do, I'll cut it out, and then I'll have that be my pattern from here on out. And as you'll notice in this image right here on the back of that pattern, I wrote down how, for me, the width to cut it, so I wouldn't forget, 13 inches wide for the strap, and then how long I want the strap to be. I suggest getting, if you have a bunch of fabric, like some of the fabrics I use are fabrics I just, for making patterns, are fabrics I've never used to make anything with because I just don't really like them, but they're great fabrics for creating patterns. If you have enough fabric, like an old sheet or something, I would say get a rough idea of your size, cut it out. I would say cut it even looser than you would need it, than you are sure you're going to need it. And then get your straps put together, and then just don't worry about the ruffle. Don't worry about the top. Don't worry about hemming, whatever. You're just trying to figure out a size. So the same thing with the straps. What did I say? I didn't bring my pattern out there, however long those straps were. I'm a short person, so you might want to cut yours longer. In fact, I would leave them plenty long. And then just pin everything together. I use safety pins, so I don't have to worry about poking myself. And then I pin, and do the same. So when you go to pin it onto the apron body, you want to make sure that you cross over, from the one side to the opposite side, same thing here and here. And then where it pins, I'll show you on the brown apron here, is I put the strap right at the edge of the apron body itself where it meets up with the ruffle, and then pin it out from there. And at that point, you can at least keep trying it on and figure out, okay, how long do these straps need to be? Is this too long? Is this too short? And then you can adjust it, and you can also figure out if the cut of that, and you got to make sure you allow for a seam allowance for hem, when you hem all the edges over. And if you like that, you can either, if it feels a little too much, you can just cut it down a little shorter, a little narrower, or leave it as is. And if it ends up being smaller and not as full as you wanted, well, you might have to cut a new piece. But this is why it's good to have like some old sheets or something you're never going to use to cut your original pattern, because doing it from cloth is going to make it a lot easier for you to figure out. So let's go back to the order of sewing it together. So once I have the top on and the ruffle on, at that point, I will then hem from one side, not across here yet, from one side all the way around the apron body, down across the ruffle, and back up the other side, and get that out of the way. And if at this point, what I recommend is, this would be a good time to figure out the length of your straps and get it all pinned together. And once you get that figured out, you can then at least wear it and figure out your pocket placement. So when I made this apron and the blue apron, I didn't put any pockets on it initially because I wasn't sure how I wanted to do my pockets, and if I really wanted to add pockets. So my original apron design, I just did a big rectangular pocket right in the middle, more like a kangaroo type pocket, that I then stitched down the middle to keep it from sagging, but also gave it to, a divided pocket, so you had two sides and you could put something in one and something else in the other. And that was fine, but I decided I didn't want that anymore. I wanted something different. So what I have now are pockets kind of more on the hips. I can actually stick my hands right down into my pockets, and it's a little handier for me. And that's going to put, especially, let's say I'm putting eggs or something heavy in there, maybe some clippers for the garden. I'm out there doing some pruning. I can set it in the pocket. The pocket is deep enough that that's not going to go anywhere, but it's also going to help keep the weight from being right in the front and bouncing against my thighs as much. So you'll see that's roughly the size of the pocket, okay? And when I cut out these pockets, I also allow enough that I want a nice wide hem. And the purpose of that is because I wanted to double stitch. And I always use a zigzag because I feel like it just covers more and has a better hold. So I actually did a double zigzag stitch all the way around each of the pockets. But also you want to make sure that this part here is totally stitched in place before you sew the pocket on. So I put my top on there. If you're going to do that, I recommend it because I found that adding this little stiffness up here made a big difference. So I have 3 layers of fabric here because it overlaps. And so I also iron all this down. Iron the hem over, iron all this down, sew it together. Then I pin the pocket to the apron and sew it on. But you're going to want to figure out, where exactly do I want these pockets? Do I want a kangaroo style in the front, or would I rather have it along the sides like I do now? And I've decided I really like this. But I chose to wear one of the aprons for a day so I can get an idea, where do I want to put my hands? What feels better for me? And I found I kept wanting to do this, have it along the side rather than in the center. And then it took me a while of trial and error trying to figure out exactly how to put the pockets on. That would be the right angle because of the curvature of the bottom of the apron. I'd pin it on and realize that's not going to work. And then I'd have to take it off, readjust it until I came out with this more of a slight angle. It might look like a more extreme angle initially, but it's just a little bit of an angle to the side. And then once I got it where I liked it, then I measured. So here to here, here to here, and from here, where these three pieces meet, the strap, the body, and the ruffle, to here, just to get a good idea of the distance so that I could use that same measurement. Oh, also from the bottom of the body to the corner and so on and so forth. And kept track of that so I would know how to place the opposite pocket to make sure that they're even. Getting the pockets sewn on, it's going to be easier if you sew the pockets on before you sew the straps on. That's why I say pin everything together, try it on, figure out where you want it. Then you can unpin this or even just sew just the top and then unpin the one side so the straps are loose and you're not having to try to work around the straps when you're putting the pockets on. But for how loose this was, since I already had the green one and the blue one put together once I decided on the pockets, it really wasn't a problem working around the straps, even though they were all already sewn on. So then once the pockets are in place, then you're going to want to sew. I recommend sewing the top on first. And then what I did was I stitched all the way across, making sure I anchor each corner down. So anchoring it down, so going over it a couple times, stitch all the way across the top, anchor it down, all the way across, anchor it down. So you're doing the reverse, forward, reverse thing. Now, here's the interesting thing about what I did here. I don't know if you're noticing that this is just slightly narrower. It's not very obvious than the rest of the strap. You might be able to see that. There's a couple of different ways you could go about this. I actually kind of took the easy way out because I knew it wasn't really going to show. And what I did, and you don't have to do this, but I didn't want the straps going all the way like this. You can if you want. I just didn't really want that. So what I did is I folded the corner in, and then it just is naturally going to go out. I just folded the corner in. I made sure I matched the strap up here, the outside edge, to the corner of the top of the apron. And then I put it at a slight angle. You don't have to do that, but I do recommend the angle. I tried it straight on and it didn't sit right. So having it come on at a slight angle, so you can see that corner down there, that works a lot better. I didn't cut any of this off. I wasn't worried about it. I did, before I stitched the straps down, turn the inside edges in and then stitch those down so I wouldn't have any raw edges there sticking out. And then I just went ahead and stitched across there and making sure I anchored it down really well. And I did the same thing here across that bottom piece of fabric here, stitched across there again so that it just anchors it down more. So I got basically double stitching. But when you're wearing it, no one's going to notice or care that this fold is here and that's going to come out. Now, another way you could do that if you like this narrower piece there, but you don't want the fold, is, well, you can simply, when you're making the strap, you can simply, as you're stitching it down, bring it in and have it go narrower in the last maybe 5 to 6 inches, just kind of taper it down. And that way you could just cut that off and you won't have a fold here at all. So that's another way you could do it. I just didn't want to guess that and mess around with that. But some people might find that easier. Oh, and then another thing about the strap I want to make sure I say is that what I did was I made the seam of the strap face inward. And I tried to put it right in the middle. So I don't know if you can see that. The seam is on the inside. So that way I don't have it on the outer edge or on the front. So you have a more smooth look. So when you sew that bottom part of the straps on, what you want to do, so you can see here where the fold is, it kind of shows right there, is you want to make sure that you double check as you're crossing that over to make sure it's flat and not twisted. I know one of them, I think it was on this one, when I first stitched it on, I realized I thought I had it straight, but the strap ended up with a twist in it, so I had to take it off and then re-stitch it down. So I'm going to pick this up again so you can see better how this is. And my hips are wider than this, and so it actually hangs more like this back here, which I like better. And it looks better back there because then it kind of flares out and it looks nicer. And another thing too to consider is how far down on the sides you want it. That's actually quite a ways down. I like this because it allows more airiness, but you could raise that up by shortening the straps. And the whole thing will come up if you don't like it like that. It's going to make the whole apron shorter and not come down as far. So let me show you on here. It's easier to show it on this loose one. That again, the strap is stitched on the bottom side. I'm just hanging it over my shoulder so it doesn't fall. From the right where the ruffle meets up with the body and then out from there. And that does that on both sides. If that to me helps it to cross over better, so you get better coverage in the back. And yes, I'm really, really happy with these. Again, it's so nice to finally have an apron I feel like I could live in again. And then here's a little tip. Because if you're like me and you like wearing aprons so you're not ruining your clothes, is that, well, eventually, you still like your aprons to look pretty, and eventually your aprons might get holes, they might get stains. At that point, that's usually when I start sewing patches on, and to cover up the grease stains or the darker stains that just aren't going to come out. And I just sew patches on it and give it an even more rustic look. And that's one of the reasons why I just decided to not put so much extra stuff on it, because eventually I'll probably have to do that. I still try to pick colors of patches and prints that are going to look best with the apron. And then before I close this out, I want to explain, you wouldn't see in the clips I put in there, you're just going to think I have a regular electric machine. So anyone who's got questions about this, well, my machine is actually a treadle machine. It was bought brand new as a treadle machine. The brand, I always call it Genome. Some people say it's pronounced Genome. I keep forgetting to look it up to see what's correct. I still just keep saying Genome because that's what I got in my head. But I actually got it from Amazon back in 2013. Best machine I've ever owned. I already had the treadle table because it was handed down to me by my mother-in-law. And so all the sewing I do is on my treadle machine. And if you want to learn more about that, what I'm going to do is link to my full playlist in the description box down below. I know I have one or two videos that I recently had remastered from back in 2016 where I show how to use the treadle machine and changing out the belt and all that. But I also, in that playlist, I do show other things like just some real simple sewing projects of things you can do yourself. And I think all my the skirt videos are all in their own playlist, so I'll make sure I link to that too. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're looking for a very comfortable, loose-fitting apron that covers a lot more of your attire, this can be the way to go. And I hope it gives you an idea of how to start. So again, I just create my own patterns when it comes to stuff like this. I haven't bought a pattern in years. I just study how something's put together and then come up with my own idea from there. Anyway, any thoughts, ideas you'd like to share, please put them in comments down below, and don't forget to click on more or show more somewhere down here below the video screen to find the links I'll be putting in there. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.